Hello there, and welcome to the Value of Everything. Okay, so today we're just going to explore illness, sickness, chronic conditions, the horrible aspects to life. I'm just keeping that on the topic of a condition that I've currently got. I've got a little bit of diarrhea and some feverish feelings and things like that, and it's not a very pleasant thing to go through at all. And I really wouldn't wish it upon anybody. I mean, one of the things about life is obviously that we eventually arrive to a point at which we die, and it is bloody awful being like progressively sick and confused and disastrous feelings and all these horrible conditions that the body goes under. I really wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, but it potentially does happen to all of us. One of the things that I always would hope that would happen to me is that there would just be some kind of you go to sleep and then you vanish away, or you get knocked down by a bus, but it's very instant and you don't really know what the hell happened. They're the ways that I would prefer to go out, but in a sense of being put under some chronic condition where a disease is eating up my insides and my body and is gradually wasting me away, I really couldn't think of anything worse. And the predicament and the thoughts, and where you think of how, imagine if Friedrich Nietzsche had not had the condition that he had. I think he was suffering from syphilis or something, but he was writing poetry and philosophy in regards to how he was facing the abyss and how the abyss was looking back at him, how it completely distorts and changes your mindset in comparison to a situation where if Nietzsche was having a good time, he was being successful in his life, in his relationships, how he would be writing in a totally different format, and maybe he would have been less so of an importance to human society, or more so importance to human society. But it's interesting in those terms. Now, one of the beauties of today's modern medicine is that we don't necessarily have to go through ridiculous amounts of pain, because we do have things like the marvel of modern medicine of like diamorphine and things like that. So there's a bit of coffee there. When we get to our last days, we do get dosed up, but I guess that may impact on our faculties, decisions that we want to make, who we want to contact, things like that. So things do get a little bit distorted. However, if you are undergoing some chronic pain, you're not really going to make too many good decisions at that stage either. So it's interesting there. Now, I was just trying to get a few little bits of information in terms of illness. Now, just like Wikipedia and things like that, just to get some broad-based information, but even that doesn't really describe it in the sense of how humans perceive pain or work with pain, even though I would say that it's going to happen to all of us, but it probably just happens just before we die. So therefore there's never really too many stories of people going through increased amounts of pain and then finding the way out of it. Now, one of the things that is people tend to forget, and this is one of the most important things, is that where somebody goes through a bout of bad illness and then crawls out from the other side and feels rejuvenated, people will all of a sudden feel amazing, like they are, how they had their lives beforehand is feeling brilliant, and they have like, what's the word? It's almost like they feel like a Superman in comparison to what they had before. They're feeling fantastic. This is the best feeling they've ever had. They really are going to cherish and savor the life that they have now in comparison to the horrible aspects of what they had beforehand. However, I've been through illness a number of times, and that feeling never sort of stays with me forevermore. I get kind of used to the day-to-day dealings of life, and then I just get used to myself having fairly good health. I get a few little tweaks in my knees and things like that, but there's not really much in the sense of me having a real major problem with my day-to-day businesses. Now, one thing about age and when we get a little bit older is that we do get a little bit more decrepit, but we sort of carry on with the challenges of life. If we do have a little bit of a pain in here and a little bit of a creak here and there, we sort of adjust our lives in accordance to it and carry on. And maybe there's questions as to how where people get older, how that potentially changes the aspects of their mind, how that changes the aspects of their life. If they're walking around dealing with a number of pain points and they're moving very slowly, it potentially changes the way in which they perceive life. Now, when you are in your early 20s and you're feeling like nothing can stop you, obviously you have excessive amounts of confidence. There's more of a high chance that you're going to get into a fight, especially if you're a young male, and you're going to take a lot more risks in terms of your life. However, if you're very old, obviously an old person, an old driver traditionally doesn't really take too many risks. They drive pretty slowly. They might drive a bit crap, but they will drive fairly slowly, take things easy, just because they are quite aware of death just sitting around the corner for them if they do take any kind of incredible risks. So another thing that I always think, and I wonder if anybody does the same thing, is that I always sort of think in terms of how the illness is inside my belly, inside of my gut, and you can think of all the the little cells that replicate, or you can see a picture of a virus and how that mutates or generates inside your body, and there's the battlefield of your white blood cells or your T cells fighting against one another. And there is this sort of mindset in which your mind is trying to say, this is getting me down. However, I'm just going to try and make myself feel a bit more positive. I'll play some good music, see if that can get me in a good mood again. And there are little things that do work and some things that don't work. And it's interesting how it's, I guess it comes to the sort of the Batman scenarios, that where you get to the darkest point of your illness, when your glands fill up and where everything's coming out of you in the best kind of way. When you get to that darkest moment, you're feeling weak and all of those number of things. That's where the tables turn, and you eventually find that redeeming moment where you can start to feel a little bit better. And once you do seem to find that you've cleared the virus outside of your body, the feeling of life is incredible. So yeah, I'm just going to try and explore this in a few other areas and see where it takes us. So it's interesting how there's an element of how a physical ailment, say like if I lost my arm, or say if I felt very ill all the time, that does affect our mind and our psyche. So it's the feeling of pain, how it affects and changes our mood, which is I think is an interesting thing in which we study ourselves. Now, one of the things about life and the things about how the mindset works is that we do have to focus upon our pains or our problems. The mind has to work and churn over it because it's a survival strategy. So if we were in any kind of danger of somebody coming around the corner, then we need to focus or worry about the predator, or say if we're in a situation of our community, and maybe say if I have been caught with stealing something, then I would be in fear of my own life, and I would have to watch my own corners and be in a constant state of fear. Now, that same scenario, I imagine the same mindset of worrisome and worry about your own mortality and things like that does come around the corner, and that's where we do push ourselves to explore the art of medicine. Now, medicine is one of the interesting areas of life. Now, even beforehand, where we did have philosophers and people trying to categorize everything and use the scientific method, medicine was pretty much there before that all existed. And thereby we would have the scientific method working in the form of medicine itself. It was a little bit of a trickier one to work out because we didn't really, back in whatever the Stone Age, tribal ages and things like that, where there was witch doctors or whoever, we could only just work out with a certain degree of mixing up potions and working with certain people and seeing how the ailments would be treated, and then passing on information through generation to generation. That sort of pseudo scientific method would work to a certain degree, and I guess there was a number of discoveries throughout mankind. I would say aspirin from the bark of a tree would have been discovered a lot long before the scientists would have worked out how to use that and extract it and put it into pill form. There was a number of other little herbal remedies which would always be worked, and herbal remedies are still with us to this day. There is a lot of correlation to certain studies where they do look at herbal remedies and they find out that there are results in which some of the herbal remedies do have a beneficial aspect to what they take. And I guess we get ourselves in the category of supplements and then medicines. So I guess supplements can sort of improve the standard of our day-to-day livings, whereas the medicine is the cure factor. Now, I would imagine that the supplement is probably like your more day-to-day sort of thing to improve life. So I guess, say for like gut and anti-cancer remedies, turmeric and ginger are meant to be very good for you, and there's a lot of evidence to prove that. And then also if we look at nutrition as well, where we look at antioxidants like vitamin C, and where we look at highly nutritional foods like broccoli, there has been obviously correlation to these things. However, maybe the nutritional things which we probably just overlooked and we just think, okay, we just need to eat this. This is edible and things like that. We may have just thought this is just something that we can consume, but we never actually see it as some kind of nutritional supplement which does. Where I say supplement is like an extra thing, but a nutritional thing which guides our health in itself. I guess there's a murky water between food and medicine, and it's kind of interesting how if you guide yourself with the correct amount of food and you provide yourself correct nutrition, then you can build up a very strong immune system so that you will never find yourself in a situation where a virus can attack you, or if it does attack you, then your immune system will be fully armed to take out any intruders. So it's interesting there, and yeah, it's just I think probably over time, I think there is going to be more so a focus upon nutritional food. I think one thing that I used to do, especially when I was more into my bodybuilding stages, is that I sort of gave up the fact of eating food just for pleasure and started to which I seem to do more so for pleasure nowadays rather than nutrition, but I do have a little keen eye every once in a while to go back into nutrition phases. But I was purely focused in my sort of like early to mid 20s into nutritional foods and seeing what I could get in return for that. So it didn't really bother me too much if, say, I didn't really eat kale, but if there was kale around and available to me, I wouldn't mind eating it, even if it tasted bitter and crap. I would eat it just to know that the food was going to be good for me and provide me with the certain minerals or bodybuilding attributes that would improve my life. So obviously raw eggs and things like that, not raw eggs, but the egg white, protein powders, things like that, which I would know that had a correlation to building muscle. So over time, I got used to knowing that in my mind that this food was nutritious and it was good for me. And then over time, there must have been some kind of little connection point in which I found that I didn't mind eating broccoli because I knew it made me feel good anyway. And therefore, I just started to like it in general, and it wasn't really like that bitter or nasty thing that I've ate before. So it's interesting how that correlates. And maybe this is the new modern way of which we are changing the psyche of our mind. In the past, we would, if we go back far enough, but we're probably going back to like where we're my species or something like that. But where we go back far enough, there was at one stage us eating fatty foods, and we didn't really quite realize that these fatty foods were good for our energy levels, and the energy levels improved our ability to survive for longer periods of time, so that we could breed more, so that we could be a more of a successful species. So we were hardwired from a very early age to of humanity and like the species of mammals to enjoy fatty, high energy, sugary foods. Now, potentially over time, we're going to start to find that we can provide ourselves with plenty of nutrition and provide ourselves with plenty of energy, which is no longer the consideration of anything that we need nowadays. But the main thing that we'll probably require is highly nutritional foods, which has all the antioxidants, all of the vitamins and minerals that we require. And I guess there will be some kind of rewiring, reprogramming of the mind. Maybe medicine may walk into this area as well, or potentially even changing our structure of our DNA so that we can block out those cravings for those kind of foods, and instead find that cow tastes exactly like a chocolate bar, which would be some incredible rewiring of the brain. It's funny how sometimes we do see it is one of the obvious things of philosophy and everything else, is that how our mind will make decisions for us where we think that this is the correct decision, yet it can be very problematic. Now, not to say that having high energy foods is all incredibly terrible. If there was a famine that just kicked off straight away and the economy is looking bad every once in a while, you're going to really start to enjoy the fact that you've got a little bit of fat around your belly at that point in time. If the supermarkets, all the tin food and everything else gets wiped off the supermarket shelves. And it is that there is a good reason why our bodies are programmed for that, because it's happened on multiple generations throughout the dawn of time for us to really get a lot of high energy foods. However, I would imagine that we are capable of feeding quite a lot of people, since we've been able to fertilize the soil and use the Industrial Revolution and machinery on farming techniques. We don't necessarily find ourselves in a situation where we need to have all these high energy foods. Okay, so yeah, it's an important thing to just explore in terms of medicine and everything else, of how it affects our psychology and how it's affecting us in terms of the way in which we're looking at sickness and disease. Another thing that I would always say is an aspect is that there is an instant search for knowledge, and this leans back to the medicine bit a little bit as well, is that whereby you're feeling ill, there's this instant thing with which you want to just grab at finding information in learning about something, really studying something to an intense degree, just to find out what is your ailments, what potentially is the problem, which organs are being affected, what medicines can cure the problem, what medicines can alleviate the problem, what are the side effects of those medicines. There's whenever somebody is put into a situation of I guess, pain, there is a transfer of, search and discovery and really understanding something into a very strong degree. Now, I guess we see that a lot, which happens when like parents have a child who's got a certain ailment or disease or focus. They instantly become pretty much experts in their field of whatever that disease would be. And it's interesting how the mind, where there obviously are two areas of focus in which somebody becomes very good at something. One of them is just your own curiosity and enjoyment of finding information. But there is obviously a very important thing of just survival strategy and the way in which we study and push ourselves in finding information and creating things in terms of our own survival. And I would say there is probably an interesting point in there in which where people are pushed into a situation of survival and they need to pull something out of the box in terms of creativity to improve their lives or improve their tribe's lives. In some ways, it can be said that there is a lot more creativity that can occur. If we look at the inventions that happened in the two world wars, even though we destroyed most of the people or the intelligence class of people in the First World War and things like that, which must have had an incredible destruction of humanity's idea generation and stuff like that, particularly in like the European theatre, there has been an incredible amount of inventions which occurred just during the First and Second World War. And I guess that is a survival strategy. That is where somebody is incredibly ill and they really want to understand what the problems are with them and they want to find a cure to the disease. It is a refocusing of energy, just try to isolate the problem, finding out what the problems are, how to cure the problem. And I guess this is... I don't think there's obviously any other animals of the species that would really sort of understand this concept of using their mind to focus upon fixing themselves. If I'm just some kind of buffalo that's had my leg broken, I'm just going to walk along and just think, oh my God, there's no cure. I'm just going to have to live the way this is now, and I might have to die or something like that. There would be some kind of definite thing about any other animal who would have some kind of ailment. Whereas there is this grasp of the mind in which to say, okay, this ain't going to stop me. This is not going to be the way of which it's going to finish me off. I'm going to do something with this, or I'm going to find a cure to this, or I'm going to, at least with my tiny piece of time that I've got left with this disease, I'm going to do something good with it. And that is, I would say, the incredible thing about humanity and how we can turn some absolute load of shit that pours down onto us into an incredible turnaround situation. Now, I guess there has been in the past scientists who have studied a lot of things in the past, whereby they would find a cure just to save somebody else's life. I think every time when that kind of situation happens, they find a cure after the person's died and things like that. But it is one of those areas in which I think with humanity, there's medicine and the scientific method may have even happened a lot a time before we could even conceive things like the scientific method. And even though it was like potentially voodoo and there was a little bit of spirituality and we was talking to the gods, there was this, and obviously this is the time in which where somebody is dead and finding their mortality, and we're trying to grasp at any kind of thing if we can find a solution to somebody's illness. And this all derives around our love for the other person and not to be alone and things like that, and how good that person, how virtuous that person was to that person in return. But there is a search in humanity to find a solution to a problem in which they will grasp at spirituality, they will celebrate the gods, they will sacrifice a lamb, they will find special leaves from trees, they will find flowers, they will grind them up, they will try a number of different solutions. They'll try topical solutions, they'll try ingestible solutions, they will try a number of things in which to cure somebody from a disorder and find a solution. Now, we could always look back at these times and think, oh, these are weird, witchcrafty times in which we're being like very strange people and things like that. But there is definitely connections here in terms of the flourishing of the human mind, love, and pushing ourselves forward in humanity, and the way in which we see mortality, disease, and illness, and how we are converting these times. Now, obviously, when we think about these viruses that occur in the past, where there was the Black Death, that must have been an incredible, shocking scenario in which people were finding themselves dying everywhere, and it would be like the priests that would go around and try and cure everybody, yet they would be the ones that get wiped out at the same time. And I guess in the evolutionary sort of terms of life, if you get the priesthoods that die, they're maybe the more spiritually inclined kind of people. Once they get wiped out, then there's a little less of evolution which is occurring here, which prevents the spirituality occurring any further, and maybe people who are using the scientific method to go on further. So I guess there is this element of where we have evolution playing a part in how that can wipe out people that have bad hygiene problems, and not using logic and scientific method reasoning and stuff like that. They get wiped out in terms of those things. And then this flourishment, this pushing for curiosity and finding a way of survival and really not giving up on life, that is pushing ourselves on the other degree. Maybe it is a part of evolution as well, which is pushing humanity forward. But disease and how we face our adversities is an important function of humanity. And I would say that it is the very interesting situation of which humanity pushes itself forward. If you look at all of the other animal species, the only reason why they've got a chance of living on this planet any further is potentially because of us, because we're the only ones that may be able to find a way of keeping this earth going a little bit further, keeping the species in record or data form and things like that. So even though you may think that we are these weird barbarous of animals that are consuming things for their own reasoning, or just for their own nutrition, we are their only sort of link to their own survival. So it's interesting in those terms. Obviously, we could get wiped out and they would flourish and they would evolve into their own certain animals if they potentially could do, but we're the ones that only sort of grasp upon intelligence more so than any other animal. So illness, it's an interesting thing. Hopefully I will continue doing podcasts into my old age, and when I get to a stage of being old and infirm, hopefully my mindset doesn't get sort of taken up with the depression and the bleakness of life. And I would really hate myself if I started saying, oh, life's a bitch and stuff like that when I'm on my deathbed and things like that. I would really hope that even in the state of staring death right in the eyes, I would still have some little piece of beauty to say at the end. So thank you very much for your time. If you've got any other thoughts, ideas or suggestions, please forward them on, and we'll chat again soon. Thank you very much.